Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Next Gen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience here at Next Gen Planners. And today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined finally by the amazing Elizabeth Webb from Fairstone. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
I'm good, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm good. We've literally just had sunshine last week, and then today here in the northeast of England, it's grey and dull. But talking to you should cheer me up, which would be good. So we never let the weather get us too far down in in Britain, do we? So for anyone who doesn't know Elizabeth, she is a financial planner at Fairstone, and she's got a pretty cool story, well, very cool story, in fact, and she's up to some really cool things as well. So I thought we'll get her on the podcast and talk about them all. So just to start us off, Elizabeth, can you tell us what you do on a daily basis? And everyone always says the same thing to this: no 2 days are the same, which tells me something about my guests, that they don't live boring lives, which is good. But can you tell us what you do on a daily basis?
Well, I'm going to have to be like everyone else and say, yeah, no 2 days are the same. There's some things that are kind of always the same on a particular day. Like one thing that I make sure that I start the day with is as soon as I wake up, and I'm one of those annoying people who wakes up before their alarms, but whatever. As soon as I wake up, I put my hand on my heart and I take 3 deep breaths, and I imagine the air flowing through my heart. And that's just to try and get the connection between your brain and your heart going properly. There's a lot of science behind it, which I won't bore you with right now. But and another thing that I like to think of is it's making sure that you start the day with your brain and your heart working. And so you can take that through the day to make sure they work together. Other than that, if I'm at my parents' house, which is where I live, then I'll go in and check on them as soon as I can, make sure that they've got everything that they need. And I will get outside as soon as I can, whether that's just out into the garden or on top of the cliffs in Ilfracombe or anything like that. When it comes down to work, it is always different and it depends. So sometimes there are client meetings, and that might be new ones, or it might be existing clients. I might take them out for a walk and talk, or we might start a Zoom conversation and I'll leave them with a question, and then they'll go out for a walk and I'll do some exercise or something, and then come back and we'll have a proper meeting. I'll be doing reviews on letters and all that jazz, and occasionally even talk to other people in Fairstone. But I'm kind of lucky in that they treat me as a bit of a silo operation. So I get to do my own thing most of the time, which is really awesome, but with the backing and compliance of Fairstone, which is really cool.
That is good. So the stuff you mentioned in there leads us nicely onto the next question, which I was going to ask, because you mentioned so many times there, they're getting outside, they're getting active, and they're getting, kind of in tune with your body. And sometimes it sounds a bit fluffy when you say it out loud, doesn't it? I mean, you say, you think it in your head and then you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. But before I ask that question, when was it that you started to pick up all these kind of, the importance of getting outside and the importance of kind of checking in with your body and things like that? Can you remember when you really started to actually pick that kind of stuff up?
I think the importance of health became really obvious, at least when my parents moved from London and retired to North Devon, and they were in their 60s at that point. Not particularly healthy, but I didn't really realise it. And then when they moved to North Devon and I saw that there were still 70 and 80-year-olds dancing on stage down here, I thought, bloody hell, I'm not going to be my parents when I get to my 60s. I'm gonna be functional and actually be able to enjoy those times. So I very much kind of had a wake-up call at that point, and so health and fitness became a bit of a drug as well. Gotta love the endorphins. But the importance of exercise, I guess, for kind of productivity or work, that's a relatively new thing, probably the last 18 months or so.
Can you tell us about how that works then? So, you're very passionate about it, clearly, and we've spoke about this in the past and we've heard you talk about it as well. And the way you phrase it is like to using the power of, I think you phrased it as using the power of exercise to make your brain work, which is a beautiful sentence if you think about it. There's so many different things in there that you could pick out. But can you tell us about how you feel after exercise and how that makes your brain work for the rest of the day?
Yeah, okay. So, well, it is all personal, and it also depends on the different kinds of exercise that you do. So, if I have really stressful things that are going on, then I will purposefully take 15 minutes out to do a mood boosting dance exercise, just because that makes me feel better. Even actually just putting on one song and dancing around the whatever room I'm in for 5 minutes makes me feel a hell of a lot better. And that's all about endorphins and adrenaline that's released into your system. And if it's done in the right way, then it's really good and useful. Sometimes, obviously, you might need to be calm after exercise, or if you're going into a particularly stressful client meeting or something like that, then you might want to take it down a notch. So yoga or Pilates or something. I'm not particularly good at calm exercises, so I prefer to kind of go for sprints to chill me out rather than yoga, but that's my jam. But there's a lot of science again behind the ability of exercise to basically empower your brain to be so much more productive.
Yeah, I guess there's that's when people talk about going to the gym, they talk about the kind of mental health aspects of it and how it can make you. But I do agree with you, it's on an individual basis, because sometimes when I've been for a run or been to the gym or whatever, I feel terrible afterwards because I'm like, I feel tired, and all those problems that I was thinking about are still there, but I don't have the energy to think about them now. Whereas for you, you get that energy from using their energy, which is cool. And that's why for some people meditation and breath work and all that kind of stuff works, and then for other people exercise works, which is a lovely thing as well, because it's individual to, like you said at the start, it's a very personal thing. And I think alongside that, a reason that many people give for not exercising and not getting out there is that they're too busy to do so. I've given this excuse so many times in the past. I'm too busy to do that. I'm too busy to do this, and I can't go to the gym because I haven't got time to do so. But if that is the case, because I mean, I'm not saying that people aren't busy, by the way, because I know that everyone is busy. Like we live busy lives nowadays. But what advice would you give people who are in that mindset to kind of get away from that mindset and introduce some type of exercise into your day and make the time for it? What advice would you give people about
that? Well, I completely understand where people are coming from, and there's a quote that I've seen that goes around sometimes, which says, make time to meditate for 10 minutes today. If you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes. And every time I see that come up, I'm just like, oh, just go away. Seriously, no one has time for that. That's insane. Meditation is useful, and I can see the benefits. I can't harness them yet, and I'm not exactly trying either. But with exercise, for me and for some people, it can actually improve the ability of your brain to work more productively. So realistically speaking, if you say, I don't have time for exercise, and I'm not saying you need to go for a 5K sprint or anything like that. You might just need to get out of the house for 20 minutes or something like that. You can actually absorb that exercise time into your work time quite easily, because your brain can work twice as fast afterwards. So you maybe don't actually have to make time, you just have to readjust how you're thinking about that time. One thing that I would say might be useful to do is not thinking of exercise or going outside as a separate task, but think of it as a work tool. So just like with financial advice, we have to go through compliance hoops occasionally. No one particularly likes to do it, but it does serve a purpose. It is a tool for the financial advice community. So actually thinking of some forms of exercise as a tool to help you with your work might help you to get over the fact that you don't want to do it in the first place.
It's a really interesting way to think about it. I love the idea of as well that you're taking time of it, but then afterwards your brain will work twice as hard. And I know that's a bit of a throwaway comment, isn't it? Because we don't actually know if it's scientifically twice as hard, but we do know that you certainly can clear your head if you do this kind of stuff, and then you kind of make back that time in massive amounts. And you mentioned it a bit there about it doesn't need to be a 5K I think you said sprint, which I can't think of anything worse than doing a 5K sprint. Um, but I know that you take part in kind of walking groups as well, don't you? Where you kind of go on a Zoom call and just, I think it's a Zoom call where you just kind of walk with other people and share ideas and stuff like that. So what else would you say is a good starting point for people if they, if they're really dealing with procrastination at the moment and they just can't seem to clear their heads and they think that getting outside or going for some kind of exercise might work? What would you say is a good starting point for doing that?
So one thing that I use quite often actually is if I'm working on a complicated client, or I am trying to work out a really difficult problem, or just can't visualize what any type of solution is in a certain scenario, then I will bullet point some things about that problem. Generally, I'll write it down as well, because writing, it works better than typing. I don't know why, but it does. So I write down some bullet points, leave the piece of paper on my desk, and then go out for 20 minutes for a walk. So that's literally just outside for a walk. You can listen to music or whatever, but you can walk fast or slow, whatever really works for you. But the idea is that you've kind of trained your brain, or you've initiated the thought process for that problem. And then when you go out for a walk, your brain is stimulated in other ways, so it can create space to work out the solution. Generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, you come back to your desk and that solution is there right in front of you. So that's one thing that is a really good starting point to, I guess, see the benefit of going outside and getting some walking in. Plus, you're technically doing work because you're thinking about the problem.
Yeah, it takes away that issue of, like you said before, being too busy, because effectively you're not actually taking yourself out of that busyness. You're just integrating something else into that, which is good. I've been trying to do 100 push-ups a day for the last few days. It's not easy at all, but I think I completely agree with you, because when I do them afterwards, I feel very switched on, especially after lunch. I do 20 press-ups. If you think, by the way, we're recording this at about 1:00, and I've just done 20 press-ups before we started. So if you think I'm a bit out of breath, that's probably why. But it's weird, like your brain, especially after lunch, when you're feeling a bit flat and you're feeling a bit deflated, poof, do something like that, and then your brain has to switch on because you're forcing it to, and then that kind of runs over into everything else that you're doing as well, which is good. I mean, it's not going to work for everyone, but and then also, if you see, next time you see me in person, if you think I'm hunched over a little bit, that's because I've been doing 100 press-ups a day and it's killing my back. But anyways, that's the next question. So many in the audience probably don't know. I would imagine they don't know that you competed in powerlifting in the past, and you're actually a British record holder. I think you are. You said that you are. We haven't checked, have we? I don't know if you have checked for powerlifting, and that was in 2019 that you got that British record. So, I mean, I could ask you about that story and that journey and everything like that. But I think what I'm most interested in is the elements of that life, the powerlifting life, that you bring over to other parts of your life. So how does your experience of powerlifting, how does that affect your day job? What elements of it do you carry over? What I think the way to think of it is transferable skills in that kind of awful interview sense, like CVs and stuff like that. But what elements of powerlifting do you transition to other parts of your life?
I think that discipline is very much a part of it. So if you're going to compete in anything, at national level or British or anything like that, then you do really have to have a game plan, and you also have to have the plan B and plan C as well. I'd like to say that I have learnt so much from powerlifting that I have definitely absorbed all of those points into my daily life, and I never make the same mistakes again. But one of the things that I tend to do is I get carried away and I overdo things, and then I hurt myself, and then I have to take a step back. And that's something that I did relatively recently, which is just a killer. I hurt my back and I couldn't run for like 2 weeks. It was insane.
Yeah, that is frustrating.
But the biggest thing is discipline, and the second thing, I guess, is making sensible goals. So with powerlifting, there are 3 different moves that you do within that. There's deadlift, which is just picking a bar up off the floor and putting it down again. That's the one that I've got a British record in. So I was good at picking stuff up and putting it down again. There's squats and there's bench press. And women are notoriously bad when it comes to any kind of upper body strength. It's just the way that we're built, and the way that our muscles generate and grow. It takes a lot to actually build up strength there. So when you're looking at kind of the numbers that you might have on a bench press workout or anything like that, you're not going to 100 kilos straight away or anything like that. You have to start off potentially with just the bar, which is killer for most women. And then it's small increments, not even every week. So it might be an extra 2.5 kilos one week, and then you take it off the next week and you build it up that way. So it's not going for crazy goals straight away. It's actually for, okay, well, I can lift 50 kilos right now. That means in 6 months' time, I want to comfortably lift maybe 65 kilos or something like that. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but I think 65 kilos is an average woman or maybe an average man or something. So I have really wanted to try and bench press one of my friends, but they won't let me, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd say incremental goals, making sensible goals, and also celebrating them. So I spent a lot of time in the gym before COVID, just running around the gym after I'd done anything, and dancing and everything. It was a great family atmosphere there, so they accepted me as I am, which was nice. But yeah, celebrating small goals.
Yeah, and a determination thing as well, I think, is definitely good, especially with on a kind of career essence. The amount of exams and everything that you have to do in financial planning, determination is the least of things that you need in that, because if you don't see the point in it, or if you don't see the kind of the end result of what you're doing it for, it can become switched off very, very easily. Especially when you start. I think it's that both of them actually match across, because when you're at the start of your financial planning journey, you're taking exams, the end can seem so far away, like especially if you're going for chartered, which you have got, the end can seem, it is years away. And it's really hard to kind of think, oh God, that's such a huge goal. But then when you break it up, okay, first thing I've got to do is do RO1, and then I'll do RO5, and then 2, 3, 4, whatever. And I think that modular aspect actually really does help people with them kind of exams, because they take one bit at a time. I don't know if it's been designed that way on purpose, probably has. But when it comes to, as well, like you're working with clients around their goals and things like that, do you find that kind of comes across as well when you're talking to clients? You can use almost analogies. You can say, okay, it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it, to say, well, when I was a powerlifter, I used to do this. But like you can say, in my experience, having these huge goals doesn't work. But if you break them up tiny pieces, seems much more achievable. Do you use that kind of mentality with clients when you're working with them around this kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, I can do. And it's funny you mentioned that analogy thing. I think I wrote a post on LinkedIn a few months back, basically saying this is how powerlifting helped in financial advice or something like that. Okay. But yeah, it obviously depends on the client and how you can relate to them as well. So some people would literally be like, exercise, I don't give a monkey's, what are you talking about that for? But it's definitely it's changed the mindset that I have when approaching clients, so I can use those kinds of experiences if it makes sense to do so. But talking goals with clients is actually really interesting, because there's I can't remember who started it, but the 5 whys. You start off with a goal of, I want a pension, and it's why, and it's financial freedom that generally is the answer. But it's really nice approach to get to that with the client, and then I guess break that down into kind of quantifiable things and smaller quantifiable goals as well.
Yeah, it's weird as well, isn't it? Because when you ask people what they want, so I've been in financial planning meetings, and you ask people what they want, and they're like, I don't know. Never, they've never really, because there's on the other side, there's then people who are like, I know what I want and I know when I want it by. But then there's the other end of this spectrum, which I think I fall on, which is, people ask me what I want, and I have to think, really rack my brain, because it's almost like a bit of decision paralysis, because you're like, there's so many things out there that I can do. I can't narrow it down because I want to do everything. But then that's where goal setting comes in really well, because you're like, well, you have to realize that you can't do everything. You're probably not going to be able to climb every mountain in the world. You can start with a few ones and see how you get on. So I think that would really work with people like me, is trying to narrow down those kind of things and breaking them up a little bit. But I agree with you, though. Like you said, the end goal for everyone is literally just financial freedom, isn't it? That's that why remind me of my science teacher at school used to, because you know what scientists are like, they're always asking why, aren't they? But she used to say, but why? And now I kind of understand why she was doing it, is because it comes down to that thing, but why? And you can go on as forever and ever and ever until you get to the end. It's like an infinite loop, isn't it? You'll never answer why to everything. That's cool. So alongside everything else that you do in your life, so exercising, being a financial planner, all everything else, being part of the Next Gen Planners community as well, training to become a public speaker for the conference this year. You're also a carer for your parents as well, which is I'm very, very interested in. I think you said a statistic about something in how many was it? 6 out of every classroom in schools or something like that. Six children are actually young carers for their parents, and that changes everything, because suddenly you think that young carers are just 1 in a million, but then you realize there's actually so many more of them out there than you imagine. And I'm really interested in just all those things that we just talked about there, and being a carer. How do you find that you balance everything? I don't think anyone could say that they've got it perfectly right, and I don't think you will say that. But what works for you when you're trying to balance all of those things alongside being a carer for your parents as well?
I definitely don't have it perfectly nailed down or anything, and
no.
It is a changing feast. It always will be. The nature of the illnesses that my parents have, they're just ones that will get worse, basically. So the care needs will change, and at some point in the future, my involvement in that care will hopefully reduce rather than increase, because otherwise that balance will get even worse. But yeah, it's kind of scary statistics. 6 kids in every classroom would be labeled young carers. So that might not be for their parents, but it might be for other siblings or other family members, or potentially friends, depending on what's going on. I only found that out because I started doing the PFS's in school sessions, although remotely. And I've kept on introducing myself as kind of a chartered accountant, chartered financial planner, lots of exams, can lift heavy things, powerlifting, aerial artist, all that jazz. And then I realized that actually I was hiding a really big part of what my life was, which was being a carer. And so it's grown in responsibility over the last couple of years, but it has been a growing thing throughout my lifetime, at least. And that's just kind of how I've been raised, almost to care, which lends itself quite nicely to financial advising, really, and planning, because you care for your clients and want to see the best for them, which makes sense. But one of the things that I have done, which works really well, although it does mean I have to have a really good relationship with my parents, and also really great organizational skills, is that I make sure that I get away every few weeks. So I arrange respite care to come in, and my sister helps out a bit more where she can and things. And I just go to some random person's house using a house sitting website and look after their pets. So it's a great kind of way, because it means that I get to have some pets without actually having to have them all the time. And I get away from my parents. They get space from me as well, which can be good. And we can kind of reset and recharge for the next stint of being there and being on call kind of 24/7, which is exhausting. And so, yeah, respite is very useful. But yeah, it's very much managing their expectations, managing clients' expectations, and also work's expectations as well. I've been very clear kind of how involved I am with my parents' care, with work, and increasingly with clients as well, which has been good.
Yeah, a lot of transparency is needed with that kind of stuff, isn't it? And if you be very upfront about it, no one's going to be disappointed afterwards. I don't think, are they? Like, when you have to cancel that meeting last minute, they'll be like, "Oh, well, I understand why, so I'm not going to pry any longer. I'll be pissed off about it because I know why she's doing it and she can't help it." What kind of this isn't in the script, Elizabeth, but what kind of reaction do you get when you tell people that you're young? Yeah, I would say young carer. I don't know how comfortable you are with being called that, but because I think when I think of young carer, I think of like people who are like 13, 14 and things like that. Whereas, so when you tell people that you're a carer and a young carer, what kind of reaction do they have? Is it kind of same across the board, or what do people respond with?
Well, I definitely don't tell them that I'm a young carer because I feel really old. So even if I'm still classed as a young one, I just go with the carer thing. But when it comes to client meetings, if I'm in my normal home office, which is a red room, I say, because I love pantomime, so this just makes me happy every time I say it. I say, if the door behind me moves, then that means that my mum, unfortunately, has forgotten that I'm in a client meeting. And so you have to yell out in full panto style, "She's behind you." And I'll just quickly jump up, have a word with her, and then we'll carry on. I normally preface that with, by the way, I am in my parents' house and I work as a carer for them as well. And then do that. And it's amazing how many people will open up about the situation with their parents or their grandparents or siblings or anything like that. Sorry, the dog is getting a bit restless now.
That's okay.
And yeah, it's just amazing how that can really easily open up a conversation for those kind of difficult things that people don't like to talk about. And I always do. So wills and powers of attorney are one of the things that I mention to absolutely everyone. And it's something I'm really passionate about because in my situation, it would have been hell had we not set up powers of attorney a few years ago before it was a massive issue. And I have seen clients on the receiving end of not having things set up properly, and just the heartbreak that it can cause when there's already a heartbreaking situation. It's not cool.
Yeah, and I guess kind of fuels your conversation. I mean, this is your you tell me if I'm wrong about this, but kind of fuels your conversations a little bit and adds a bit of passion behind it because you know firsthand how much that saved you. So when you're telling clients about it, it's not just you saying it because you think you should or you're required by regulation. You're saying it because it actually does. And here's what I've been. I mean, you wouldn't always say here's what I've been through because that wouldn't make sense, would it? But you carry that extra bit of passion because you can tell the difference that it makes to people's lives. I also think it's a really good, you mentioned it there, it's a really good way into conversations because everyone's got one of these stories, haven't they? In reality, everyone is, because when you were talking about that, I was thinking about my own personal story. I'm not a carer, but we've had that kind of same illness or same kind of thing in the family before. And everyone's got that story. So it kind of opens up with vulnerability, which is always a good way to start conversations because then you've got no pretenses to hide behind and it kind of opens up that other person as well. So you feel a lot more kind of comfortable. This is the ultimate British thing, isn't it? To turn something that could be considered, not the best in reality, but turning it into an optimistic thing and saying, this is how I use it in my everyday life, which is really admirable and it's cool. I don't think we could have done this podcast without talking about that. So thank you for letting us have the opportunity to talk about it because I know it's very personal to you, but it's really interesting. I think the audience will find it interesting as well, which is good. So if we can move on from that slightly, you qualified as financial planner in 2014, I think you told me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And fellowship, it came in 2018. So I think, was that right? Yeah. Okay, got that as well. She's nodding, everyone, for people who are listening. So this is a big question. I don't want to sound too much like I'm a financial planner interviewing one of their clients, but what would you say is next for you in both your career and your life as well?
Wow, that is a very big question, isn't it?
Mm.
And I'm probably a bad client in that I've got no idea.
Just like me.
Yeah. I'm forever learning. Everyone is. And when it comes to the kind of financial advice world, I am very involved, involved personally in kind of later life care, because that's where my parents are at. And so it makes a lot of sense for me to follow that route. And I care a lot about kind of dealing with people in vulnerable circumstances and the best way to deal with that. So that's the potential route that I'm taking from the financial advice perspective.
Good.
Other than that, again, within work, I'm just enjoying the process of getting to know my clients. So I only joined Fairstone in March 2020, and that was to take over from a retiring financial advisor. So I've had the whole pandemic to get to know my clients, which has been a bit of a weird one. But so getting to know them and choosing new clients that I like and that are my kind of people, which is really lovely. It's a great position to be in. So that's from the financial perspective. From a personal perspective, again, it's a big question mark. It does depend on the situation with my parents and how they continue to deteriorate and how fast it happens and all that jazz. One thing actually, just to kind of bring us back with the powers of attorney, I think I'm lucky in that my mum is on the side of losing her marbles, but generally has good physical mobility to an extent. And my dad is on the side of pretty much physically immobile, but he has all of his marbles. So I can talk about powers of attorney and the power of them from both perspectives. So basically, when I'm talking to people who are terrified of the idea of giving up control and they, don't need it because they can manage all their finances and stuff, I talk about the fact that actually my dad still manages all of his finances. He just uses me to sign checks and do the grunt work. So in effect, I'm just his personal assistant, which is a 24/7 job anyway. But yeah, I think that's a really powerful way to bring that conversation in again. It's all dependent on what happens with them. I don't know if my potential pipe dream of becoming a retained firefighter might happen someday. I would love to be able to say to clients when I start their meeting, by the way, I'm also on call. So if I have to duck out, it's because I'm going to go save a cat from a tree or something like that. But that's a potential idea for the future. I never thought I could be a firefighter. So now I've realized that I'm fit enough to do it. Hopefully I can.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever thought about this, but that just sums everything up, because in both a literal and perhaps philosophical sense, you care for people. The job financial planner is caring for people. You physically, you are actually a carer for your parents as well. And also the firefighter thing that you just mentioned there, which is a kind of, I don't think you thought about that beforehand, but then you kind of just brought it in. That is also heavily caring. And it's not just for people either. Like you said, it's pets and cats and stuff like that, which tells a lot about you actually, which is, I don't think we expected to get that out of this podcast, but hopefully that does come across. And you forgot to mention, of course, as well, that you are actually going to be a speaker at this year's conference. So you'll be a fantastic, world famous public speaker at some point as well, which you've got to be in the conversations. And just a little point you mentioned before, that you said my kind of client. Just quickly, what would you say that is? Who would you say that would be in summary?
I don't know. How do you choose? Sorry, that was the dog headbutting the table.
That's okay.
Getting a bit antsy for some reason. I guess my kind of client is someone who isn't afraid to engage with the financial advice process in a non-conventional way and has an understanding of the power of money, but not the ultimate overarching power that is money. It's a tool to get to what you want, but it's not the thing that makes everyone happy. No. And it makes very few people happy, really. It can make a lot of things easier, but it's not the reason to be. And I'm very much attracted to people who realize the use of money, but realize that is not a reason to be.
Yeah. I think I heard it the other day, it's like money buys financial freedom, and then financial freedom buys freedom. And that is happiness. Proper freedom is happiness. I guess, I think some people have mentioned this in the past. The reason that a lot of people come to their financial planner is because they've got their statement through, or they're thinking of doing something like buying a house or something like that. And it starts from a financial sense pretty much all the time. Like, that is the kind of way the conversation is pivoted from the very beginning. And a good financial planners will turn that pivot, and they'll go, no. We're not going to talk about any of that kind of stuff today. We're going to talk about you and what you want to do. And then that kind of stuff comes later, which is what you've just kind of said there, isn't it? That's the kind of people you want to be working with, who are accepting of that, so that when you say that to them, they won't be like, oh God, I'm not going to work with her. Then you say, okay, that's kind of cool way to think about it. And that kind of brings us nicely into the next question as well. And it's the first time I've got to say this on the podcast today, but segue, I love using that word. I've only just realized actually that it's not spelt the way I thought it was. It's spelt Segue.
Yeah.
Which is like a
French. Are you thinking
word.
of the Segway as in the thing that you ride on?
Yeah, I'm thinking like Segway, which is just not right at all. And I've been realizing I've been spelling it wrong for ages. But yeah, that brings us nicely into the next question, which I stopped asking for a while, and then I brought it back because I realized that I really love people's responses to it. So obviously, Next Gen Planners, we're thinking about the future of financial planning. We're thinking about what it's going to look like in the future. But from your perspective, what do you think? And I guess a bit hope. What do you think and hope it will look like in, let's just say, 20 years' time? What do you think?
I guess that kind of, it's a beautiful segue, and an SEGUE kind of segue too, because from what you said in terms of people come to you for a financial reason, that's because we're called financial advisors, but realistically, the one way of approaching financial advice is almost not talking about it at all at the beginning. So actually, just a name change would be nice. So if in 20 years' time we're not actually called financial planners as the headline name, that could make more sense for people who come to us and are surprised by the fact that the first meeting isn't actually talking about anything financial. So I would love it to have, I guess, a kind of rebranding. If you could help out with that, that'd be grand. And to understand the real reason behind financial advice, which is not for the money, but it's for the person. I could wish for so many different things in terms of what we could have in the financial advice community, in terms of better compliance, less regulation, more regulation, more structure, less structure, more process, less process. Literally in all different ways, everything could be changed and it could be better. But for an ideal world, that might be the case rather than in reality. I'd like to live in an ideal world, but I'm not sure that's possible just yet.
I can hear people in the audience thinking, oh, God, we're not going to change our name again, are we? Like, we've just got used to calling ourselves financial, because there's that debate, isn't there, between financial advisors or calling ourselves financial planners. I don't really care what people call themselves. It's the clients. Make sure the clients understand what it is. That's the most important point. And there's been life planners brought in as well, which is, I think that ticks all the boxes. We just got to get everyone to use it again. Like, planning someone's life and then how their money fits into it sounds beautiful. And that's exactly kind of what we're going for. We call ourselves whatever we want, can't we? But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that when you turn up for that meeting, the clients aren't surprised. Like you said, the clients aren't surprised that you're not going to start with money. The money comes at the end. Okay. So I've just let my brain go free here. So I think it's probably time we brought it to a close, because otherwise we can get to all sorts of weird places. So we do like to ask our guests for a book that has helped them in their career so far. I always say on this podcast, it doesn't have to be a book. It can be any piece of content. You know, it can be a film, it can be a piece of music, it can be a book. You know, what would you say has really impacted you, or what do you remember when I ask this kind of question? What comes to mind straight away when I ask that type of question?
What comes to mind is pretty much a big blank. I'm horrendous when it comes to actually reading and finishing kind of useful books, which is quite bad.
But to be fair, you've got a lot on, so we'll let you off, because you've got plenty on, haven't you?
Thank you. So I try to listen to audiobooks, but if I'm kind of walking in nature or running or anything, I totally zone out from whatever that is. So I would say music features very heavily in my motivation for exercise and for life and for financial advice. And I'm really grateful that things like Spotify exist, because I can ask or I can play a certain type of music for whatever piece of work that I'm planning on doing. So sometimes when I used to do accountancy a lot, I would play heavy metal music, because it would help me focus on kind of the specific numbers and stuff like that. When I'm trying to do certain types of client work, I might listen to more trance music or jazz or something like that. So I'm just really grateful that there's that kind of availability to me. From a non-financial perspective, something that I did listen to recently that caught my interest and worked out quite well timing-wise was Stephen Fry's Victorian England. I think it's just a few episodes on Audible, and it's Stephen Fry, who is awesome, and just random interesting things about Victorian England, which is
that's cool.
Not at all financial advice related.
No, so. They're the best ones. I love it, because we talk about finance all day, don't we? So we want something different. I've listened to a few Stephen Fry audibles, and the best thing about him is that he actually narrates them, and he does like voices and things as well, doesn't he? Because he's obviously a good actor as well. But he does like voices, and he has different kind of tones of voice, rather than just like me reading an audiobook would be the worst thing in the world. I think people will get sick of that very easily. But Stephen Fry, we actually sometimes put it on to sleep, and it really helps, because he's got such a calm voice, and it's like, oh man, it's nice. I'm going to give that one a listen, because that sounds really good. Okay, so thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. We always like to give the last word to our guests to say a big thank you for coming on the show. That results in telling us where we can find you, connect with you, and if you really fancy it, you can leave us with a bit of motivation as well.
Okay, so I am available through the Fairstone website, I believe, but I hang out on LinkedIn quite a lot, and I'm just Elizabeth Webb on LinkedIn. And I would say a piece of motivation. So I'm going to go and walk my dog near someone else's dog who is trying to learn how to be a good dog, and meet other dogs properly. I would say if you can, then you should do what we said earlier about any problem that you've got, bullet points, get outside for 20 minutes, just 20 minutes. If you can't manage 20, manage 10. If you can't manage 10, then just put on a really good song, get up out of your chair and dance for 5 minutes. And I guarantee you will feel better out of any of those options. And you'll probably have solved whatever problem you were working with too.
Brilliant. What a way to finish. Heavy metal is recommended. That's what we should say, isn't it? Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was a real pleasure chatting with you. So that was Elizabeth Webb from Fairstone. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can share it on all of the social media. So we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and nowadays you can actually watch it as well on YouTube, so you can see our faces when we're having a conversation. And you can also find it on the Next Gen Planners website, which is nextgenplanners.co.uk. On there, you'll find more information about the Next Gen Planners training contract, the Blast Off program, the Future Leaders program, the Advice Stack product, and also our conference, which is coming up in May and June, which Elizabeth will be one of our fantastic speakers at, and the Next Gen Planners community, which is now over 700 strong, and Elizabeth is also a member of the community as well. So you find more information about that on nextgenplanners.co.uk. But thank you so much to Elizabeth for joining me on today's show. Thank you to you guys for listening as always, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.